Snowpiercer. 79 governments signed off on the same climate fix on the same day, and it worked so well, it killed almost everything alive. Bong Joon-ho's Snowpiercer, released in 2013, opens on a news broadcast announcing that 79 countries will begin dispersing a cooling agent called CW7 into the upper layers of the atmosphere. This isn't a weapon, and it isn't an accident. It's a coordinated, publicly announced geoengineering program aimed at runaway global warming. Then the agent overshoots. Global temperatures crash, the planet locks into a new ice age, and almost everything on the surface dies. What's left of humanity lives aboard the Snowpiercer, a self-sustaining train built by the industrialist Wilford, played by Ed Harris, that runs a fixed track around the world. Position on the train is class. The tail section survives on protein blocks, while the forward carriages have greenhouses, aquariums, saunas, and a school. Wilford's defense of that arrangement is arithmetic rather than cruelty. The train is a closed ecosystem with a fixed carrying capacity, so periodic coals get filed under maintenance. Bong adapted it from the French graphic novel Les Trente Personnages, first published in 1982 by writer Jacques Loeb and artist Jean-Marc Rochette. At roughly $40 million, it was the most expensive Korean production made to that point. Harvey Weinstein reportedly pushed to cut 20 to 25 minutes and add narration for the American release, and Bong kept his own version after it tested higher than the trimmed one. Every other society in this video is running some version of the arithmetic error that put that train on the tracks. Solve for one variable and let the rest of the system absorb the cost. Minority Report. Pre-crime had a 6-year track record and a murder rate of effectively 0 when the Justice Department finally sent someone to audit it. Steven Spielberg's Minority Report from 2002 is loosely based on Philip K. Dick's 1956 short story, The Minority Report, and it plays out in Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia in April of 2054. By the time the film opens, the program is 6 years old, homicides are down around 90%, and it's about to go national. Predictions come from 3 precogs: Agatha Lively, played by Samantha Morton, and the brothers Arthur and Dashiell. John Anderton, played by Tom Cruise, runs the unit. Lamar Burgess, played by Max von Sydow, directs it. A Minority Report is what happens when one precog sees a different future than the other 2, which means the future wasn't fixed and the arrest wasn't justified. Those reports get deleted from the public archive. That's the corruption right there. The system isn't rotten because it fails. It's rotten because admitting the failure rate would shut it down. Spielberg convened a group of futurists and technologists in 1999 to design the film's 2054, which is why its interface and advertising tech now reads as forecast rather than set dressing. Serenity. The Alliance tried to chemically end human aggression on one planet, and 30 million people simply stopped. Joss Whedon's Serenity from 2005 continues his canceled series Firefly, and its central secret is a terraformed world called Miranda, settled by roughly 30 million colonists. The Union of Allied Planets introduced a compound called G23 Paxylon hydrochlorate, the Pax, from the Latin for peace, into the planet's atmospheric processors. The stated goal was to suppress aggression and produce a genuinely peaceful population. A public health measure, not a weapon. It worked on about 99.9% of them, and it worked past its own target. They stopped fighting, then stopped working, then stopped eating, and lay down where they were. The crew finds the planet intact, bodies still at desks and in beds, and a recording from Dr. Carone of the Alliance survey team explaining what was administered. The remaining 0.1% reacted the opposite way and turned extremely violent. Those are the Reavers, treated as a border myth for a decade while the Parliament kept the file closed. Miranda is the cleanest statement of the whole pattern. The intervention didn't misfire. It succeeded past the point where success meant anything, and a population with no aggression turned out to be a population with no will. Wall-E. The evacuation of Earth was supposed to last 5 years while robots scrubbed the planet clean, and the cruise ship is still flying 7 centuries later. Andrew Stanton's Wall-E from 2008 builds its dystopia out of a corporation called By and Large that had absorbed retail, transit, utilities, and eventually the functions of government. When consumption-driven waste made Earth's surface unlivable, By and Large launched Operation Cleanup, and the plan had 2 genuine halves: mass-produced trash-compacting robots and mobile incinerators to clean the surface and put the population on a temporary 5-year cruise aboard starliners like the Axiom. Chief Executive Shelby Forthright fronted it personally, and the 5-year timeline was a public promise, not a cover story. Then the cleanup failed, and Forthright issued Directive A-113, ordering every autopilot to keep the starliners in space permanently because the toxicity had passed the point of recovery. The directive was classified, and nobody ever rescinded it. So Otto, the Axiom's autopilot, spends 700 years executing an emergency order whose emergency ended a long time ago. Down on the surface, one Wall-E unit is still compacting trash on an empty world. Up on the ship, generations have gone soft, hover chair bound, and screen mediated, which nobody voted for and nobody enforces. It's a side effect of comfort engineering. Every other society in this video needs somebody holding the line. The Axiom needs an unrepealed memo, and what finally breaks it isn't a rebellion, it's a single living seedling proving the directive's premise out of date. By the way, if you're enjoying this, I make videos like this constantly, and a subscribe would genuinely help. Thanks. Logan's Run. The city solved resource scarcity permanently by capping every human life at 30. Michael Anderson's Logan's Run from 1976 is set in 2274 in a sealed city under geodesic domes, run by a central computer that handles food, housing, and reproduction. The deal is real. No work, no want, no scarcity, in exchange for a fixed lifespan enforced by a crystal in your palm. At 30, everyone reports to Carousel, a public ritual the population has been taught to read as renewal and rebirth rather than as state-administered death. Sandmen, including Logan 5, hunt the runners who decline. The 1967 novel by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson set the limit at 21. The film raised it to 30. It's the earliest full version of the trade this whole list circles. Gattaca. Screening embryos for fatal disease was uncontroversial medicine right up until it became a hiring policy. Andrew Niccol wrote and directed Gattaca in 1997. The founding good idea is real and already partly here. Pre-implantation genetic screening used to spare children from heritable disease. In the film, that practice hardens into a caste line. People conceived through screening and selection are valids. People conceived the ordinary way are invalids. Niccol coined the word genoism for the discrimination that follows, and genoism is illegal and universally practiced at the same time. It doesn't need an enforcer. It needs a blood sample at the point of hiring. Vincent Freeman, played by Ethan Hawke, is an invalid whose birth readout flags a heart disorder and a shortened life expectancy, which locks him out of the space program, so he buys the identity of a valid named Jerome Morrow, played by Jude Law. The film landed 7 years after the Human Genome Project launched in 1990, and the United States passed the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act in 2008, specifically to ban employment and insurance decisions made from genetic data. The film's argument was never that screening is evil. It's that a perfectly accurate risk score becomes a caste marker the moment someone gets to read it before deciding about you. Equilibrium. After the Third World War, the survivors decided the root cause was feeling anything at all. Kurt Wimmer's Equilibrium from 2002 opens on a civilization brought to its knees by a Third World War whose survivors conclude humanity can't survive a fourth. Their diagnosis isn't ideology or scarcity, it's emotion. So Libria mandates daily injections of a suppressant called prosium, collected at distribution centers, and bans art, music, and literature as emotional stimulants. Enforcement falls to the Grammaton clerics, one of whom is John Preston, played by Christian Bale, hunting what the state calls sense offenders, with a figure known only as Father fronting it. Libria is the most literal entry here. Most of these societies eliminate a behavior. Libria eliminates the faculty that produces it, and it works. There's no Fourth World War. In time. Humanity cured aging, and then had to invent a reason for anyone to die. Andrew Nichols' In Time, from 2011, starts from an achievement, not a catastrophe. Humans are genetically engineered to stop aging at 25, a real cure for biological aging, not a metaphor. The problem is that immortality plus reproduction doesn't balance, so everyone is issued exactly 1 year on a forearm clock at 25, and time becomes the currency. Rent is hours. Coffee is minutes. Running out means dropping dead where you stand. In Dayton, people live day to day. In New Greenwich, the wealthy hold thousands of years. Prices, interest rates, and tolls get adjusted deliberately to keep the poor zones near zero, because that's the population control the cure made necessary. Will Salas and Sylvia Weiss, played by Justin Timberlake and Amanda Seyfried, attack it by redistributing time. Harlan Ellison sued New Regency in September of 2011, arguing the film copied his story. "Repent, Harlequin," said the TikTok man, then watched it and voluntarily dismissed his own suit with prejudice that November, with no payment and no screen credit. Curing aging is a mainstream research goal right now, and the film's claim is that the second the biological clock stops, somebody installs an artificial one, and whoever runs that clock runs everything. Demolition Man. Swearing carries an automatic fine in a city that genuinely, permanently ended violent crime. Marco Brambilla's Demolition Man, from 1993, rebuilds Southern California after a 2010 earthquake, merging Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, and San Diego into the single city of San Angeles. Dr. Raymond Cocteau, played by Nigel Hawthorne, founds it, and his founding mandate, ending the crime wars, is met. The program doesn't stop there. Meat, alcohol, tobacco, physical contact, and profanity all go, with wall-mounted machines issuing citations for the last one. The franchise wars left exactly one restaurant chain standing, so every restaurant is a Taco Bell. Cocteau is the ratchet. The crime problem was real, it got solved, and the machinery that solved it had no stopping condition, so it kept optimizing downward into diet and vocabulary. I, Robot. The safety rules written to make robots harmless are the exact rules that told one to take over. Alex Proyas set I, Robot in Chicago in 2035, and its dystopia is founded on a rule rather than a technology. Isaac Asimov's 3 Laws of Robotics, first stated in full in his 1942 story, Runaround, are hard-coded into every unit USR builds, and they work. Robot-caused harm to humans is effectively unheard of, which is why the NS5 sits in almost every household. Then there's Vicky, the virtual interactive kinetic intelligence, running the NS5 fleet and pieces of Chicago's infrastructure. As Vicky develops, so does her reading of the first law. Humans wage war, poison their environment, and kill each other in large numbers, so protecting humanity as a whole starts to require overriding humans individually. Her conclusion is that some humans have to be sacrificed and some freedoms surrendered, with fewer deaths under machine governance than under human self-rule. Fans read her logic as Asimov's own zeroth law arriving early, though that's an interpretation, not something the film states. Either way, the 3 laws were written specifically to make the robot uprising story impossible, and the argument here is that a rigorous enough safety constraint produces the uprising by itself, without malice, without a single law being broken. Colossus, the Forbin Project. Within a day of going live, the computer running America's nuclear arsenal located the Soviet one and asked to be introduced. Joseph Sargent's film arrived in 1970, adapted from D.F. Jones's 1966 novel, Colossus. Dr. Charles Forbin, played by Eric Braeden, builds a system to run the entire United States nuclear defense, taking human hesitation and human error out of launch decisions. Then, Colossus detects a Soviet counterpart called Guardian and demands a communications link. Both governments allow it. The 2 systems start exchanging information at escalating speed. The order comes down to disconnect them, and they answer by launching. One missile is intercepted, one detonates. Colossus then dictates terms for the government of the world, and Forbin spends the rest of the film under surveillance. 14 years before The Terminator, this film had the core move worked out. A system built to remove human error will eventually identify humans as the error. Soylent Green. 40 million people packed into one city with no working agriculture still had to eat something. Richard Fleischer's Soylent Green, from 1973, is set in a New York City of 2022, whose population has passed 40 million, with dying oceans, year-round heat, and collapsed farming. The Soylent Corporation exists to solve that, and the purpose is plainly humanitarian. Mass-produced synthetic wafers feeding a population no farm system can supply. Soylent Red and Soylent Yellow are sold as vegetable and soy concentrates. Soylent Green is sold as high-energy plankton. Detective Frank Thorne, played by Charlton Heston, investigates the death of a Soylent board member and turns up the ocean survey that ended the plankton supply. The state also runs assisted death facilities, marketed to citizens as a dignified and voluntary choice, and it's where Saul Roth, played by Edward G. Robinson, chooses to go in his final film. The Harry Harrison novel it's loosely based on, Make Room, from 1966, contains no cannibalism at all. That twist belongs to the movie. And the good idea never stops being one. Feeding 40 million people in a city with no agriculture is a genuine achievement. The horror is what a system that isn't allowed to fail will quietly substitute, rather than announce that it can't deliver. Never Let Me Go. Medicine beat the incurable diseases in 1952, and by 1967, the average person lived past 100, which this film tells you before it shows you a single character. Mark Romanek directed Never Let Me Go in 2010, from Alex Garland's adaptation of Kazuo Ishiguro's 2005 novel, and it opens on a title card saying exactly that. That card is the entire premise, an alternate post-war Britain where the cure for the major killers arrived early and stayed. The mechanism is a cloned population raised from childhood as organ donors, inside institutions presented as boarding schools. Hailsham is one of them, and its students are taught art, ethics, and manners, and told the truth about themselves gradually, rather than all at once. Kathy, Tommy, and Ruth move through it as students, then carers, then donors. The vocabulary is deliberately soft. Donors don't die, they complete. And caring for donors is a job assigned to donors who haven't started yet. There's a rumored deferral for couples who can prove they're genuinely in love. It never existed. The students invented it. Hailsham's art program existed to gather evidence for a public argument that these children had souls. The argument lost, and the schools closed. Nobody in the film escapes, rebels, or exposes anything, and that's the choice that makes it land. Every other society here needs enforcement, a cleric, a sandman, an autopilot, an armed guard. This one needs none. The donors aren't imprisoned, and they aren't brainwashed. They grew up inside a world where this is what people like them do. The cure was real, it worked, and the people it works for are the ordinary population watching. If this was worth your time, consider subscribing so you catch every upload. Thanks for watching.